cleaning lady sees her daughter dancing with the CEO's son. Then the unexpected happens. Sarah Johnson swallowed the lump in her throat when she saw her 8-year-old daughter in the center of the company's main hall, dancing hand in hand with a blonde boy wearing a suit. She had hidden Emily in the employee locker room because she had no one to leave the girl with that Friday, but the child had escaped, drawn by the music of the company party. The 9-year-old boy, who was gently holding her daughter's hand, was Ethan Reynolds, son of the owner of the company where she had worked for 7 years as a cleaning lady. All the executives watched in awkward silence, some whispering among themselves, others just frozen by the unusual situation. Sarah felt her legs tremble. The company rules were clear. Employees could not bring family members to the corporate premises. She knew she was risking her job, but she had no choice. The neighbor who took care of Emily after school had traveled, and Sarah couldn't miss work, not with her daughter's medical bills piling up. The 2 children twirled to the sound of the music, completely unaware of the adult's embarrassment. Ethan laughed as he taught simple steps to Emily, who tried to follow with a natural grace that surprised everyone. The girl wore a simple beige blouse and worn-out sneakers, contrasting with the boy's impeccable suit. "Emily," Sarah called in a low voice, trying not to draw more attention. But before she could reach the children, a firm hand touched her shoulder. Sarah turned and met the stern gaze of Richard Reynolds, the company's CEO. Tall, imposing, with his 52 years and perfectly combed grey hair, he radiated authority. "Mrs. Johnson," he said in a controlled but cold voice, "can you explain why your daughter is here?" Sarah felt her blood run cold. Around her, the other employees began to discreetly move away, as if the situation were contagious. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. "Daddy!" Ethan ran to them, still holding Emily's hand. "This is my friend. She dances very well." Richard looked at his son with an expression Sarah couldn't decipher. There was something beyond authority there, something that seemed almost vulnerable. "Ethan, go to your mother," ordered Richard, pointing to where an elegant brunette woman watched the scene with concern. "But Daddy, I invited her to dance. It was my idea." "Now, Ethan." The boy reluctantly let go of Emily's hand and walked toward his mother, but kept looking back. Emily stood still in the middle of the hall, confused and frightened by the tension in the air. Sarah finally found her voice. "Mr. Reynolds, I can explain. The person who takes care of my daughter traveled last minute, and I had no one to leave her with. I hid her in the locker room, but she decided to take a tour of the company." Richard completed, his tone sharp. "Mrs. Johnson, how long have you been here?" 7 years, sir." 7 years, and in all that time you haven't learned the basic rules of conduct." Amanda Reynolds discreetly approached her husband and whispered something in his ear. Richard hesitated for a moment, his gaze alternating between Sarah and the 2 children. "Take your daughter away. Immediately," he said finally. "We will discuss this on Monday." Sarah took Emily by the hand and left the hall under the curious gazes of everyone. Her hands trembled as she walked through the company's hallways toward the service elevator. Emily cried softly, not understanding why she had been separated from her new friend. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. Over the weekend, Sarah barely managed to sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, thinking about what she would say on Monday, the words she would use to try to save her job. The cleaning lady's salary wasn't much, but it was what kept the small rented apartment on the outskirts of New York City running, and paid for Emily's medical appointments, as she had been born with a heart condition that required constant monitoring. Emily, in turn, couldn't stop asking about Ethan. She wanted to know when she could see him again, if they could dance together once more. Sarah didn't have the heart to tell her that it would probably never happen again. On Monday, Sarah arrived at the company at 5 in the morning, as always. She began her routine by cleaning the bathrooms on the 15th floor, where the executive offices were located. Every movement was mechanical, automatic, but her mind was elsewhere. At 9 in the morning, her supervisor Karen appeared with a serious expression. "Sarah, Mr. Reynolds wants to speak with you. Now." Sarah dried her hands on her apron and followed Karen to the executive elevator. She had never been up to the 20th floor, where the CEO's office was located. The hallway was wide, with marble floors and expensive paintings on the walls. Everything there breathed money and power. Richard's secretary made her wait for 15 minutes that felt like hours. Finally, she was called in. Richard was sitting behind a huge dark wood desk, shuffling papers. He didn't look up when she entered. "Sit down," he said without looking at her. Sarah sat in the chair across from the desk, her hands clasped in her lap to disguise their trembling. "Mrs. Johnson," Richard finally looked at her. 7 years of work, clean record, never caused any problems. Why did you decide to break the rules now? "Sir, I haven't finished speaking." Sarah closed her mouth and waited. "You jeopardized company security by bringing an unauthorized child. You created an awkward situation in front of important clients. And on top of that, your daughter interrupted a corporate event." Each word felt like a punch to the stomach. Sarah knew she was being fired. It was only a matter of time until he said the fatal words. "However," Richard continued, "my son won't stop talking about your daughter. He wants to know when he can see her again." Sarah looked up, surprised. "Ethan is a particular child," Richard said, choosing his words carefully. "He has trouble making friends. Most children he meets are only interested in what he can offer them, not in who he really is." Sarah didn't know what to say. "Your daughter was different. She treated him like a normal child, not like the owner's son. That was refreshing." Richard stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the busy Fifth Avenue below. "But rules are rules, Mrs. Johnson. I can't make exceptions." "I understand, sir. You will be transferred to the night shift, from 8 at night to 4 in the morning, starting today." Sarah felt her world collapse. The night shift meant she couldn't take care of Emily. It meant having to find someone to stay with the girl every night, an expense her salary couldn't handle. "Sir, please," she said, her voice choked. "I need to take care of my daughter. She has health problems and—" "That's your responsibility, not mine," Richard cut in without turning around. "You may go." Sarah left the room on shaky legs. In the elevator, the tears finally came. 7 years of hard work, of dedication, all ruined because of 15 minutes of distraction. Karen was waiting for her on the ground floor. "So?" asked the supervisor. "Night shift," Sarah managed to say between sobs. Karen sighed and shook her head. "Sarah, I shouldn't be telling you this, but the order came straight from the board. Mr. Reynolds was being pressured by the other executives to fire you. The night shift was a way to keep you employed without losing face." "This doesn't change anything," Sarah said, drying her eyes. "I can't work at night. I have no one to leave Emily with." "What if you quit?" "I can't. I need the vacation money and the Christmas bonus. Emily's appointments cost so much." Sarah spent the rest of the day in a fog. She worked mechanically, cleaning offices and bathrooms, but her mind was busy trying to solve the impossible problem her life had become. At night, when she got home, Emily ran into her arms as she always did. "Mommy, when will I see Ethan again?" Sarah hugged her daughter tightly, trying to find words that weren't a complete lie. "I don't know, sweetheart. It might take a while. But he's my friend. He taught me how to waltz." "I know, honey, I know." That night, after Emily fell asleep, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, calculating and recalculating her finances. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find a solution. If she quit, she'd be broke and without health insurance. If she accepted the night shift, she'd have to leave Emily alone or pay for a babysitter that would cost almost her entire salary. Meanwhile, across town, at the Reynolds mansion in Beverly Hills, Ethan couldn't sleep either. "Dad," he said, entering Richard's office without knocking. "Why were you mean to Emily's mum?" Richard looked up from his computer. He was working late, as always. "Ethan, you should be asleep." "I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emily. She was sad when you fought." "We didn't fight. I just explained the rules to her mother. What rules? Richard sighed. How do you explain social hierarchy and corporate rules to a 9-year-old? Ethan, Emily is the daughter of a company employee. There are rules about where she can and cannot be. But why? She's just a girl like me. It's complicated. No, it's not. Ethan raised his voice, something rare for him. You always say I need to be kind to everyone, but when I'm kind to Emily, you get mad. Richard closed the laptop and looked at his son. Ethan's eyes were shining with held-back tears, his hands clenched into small fists. Son, you don't understand. I do understand. You don't like Emily because she's poor. The accusation hit Richard like a slap. He rose from his chair and knelt in front of his son. Ethan, that's not it. Yes, it is. Mom always says we should help those in need, but when I befriend someone who needs help, you pull us apart. The boy ran out of the office, leaving Richard alone with his thoughts. For the first time in a long while, he questioned whether he had made the right decision. The next morning, Amanda found her husband having coffee alone on the patio. Ethan had refused to come down for breakfast. He hasn't spoken to me since last night, said Richard, stirring his coffee absently. Richard, perhaps it's time for you to reconsider this situation. Amanda, you know I can't set a precedent. If I allow employees to bring their children to the company, this isn't about corporate rules and you know it. Richard looked at his wife. Amanda had known him for 20 years, from before he became the CEO. She could read his true motivations better than he could himself sometimes. What are you talking about? Richard, you're punishing a working mother because our son befriended her daughter. Don't you think that's a little inhumane? I'm not punishing anyone, I'm maintaining professional standards. Transferring her to the night shift when you know she has a young daughter. That's not maintaining standards, Richard. That's cruelty. Richard stood up abruptly from the table. I have a company to run, Amanda. I can't make decisions based on feelings. And I have a son to raise, she retorted. A son who's learning from his father that money and social status are more important than compassion and humanity. Richard left without responding, but Amanda's words echoed in his mind all the way to the office. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Sarah started the night shift that Monday. She had managed to convince her downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, a 70-year-old lady, to stay with Emily in exchange for $50 per night. It was money she didn't have, but she saw no other option. The company building at night was a completely different place. The empty hallways echoed her footsteps, and only the emergency lights remained on. Sarah worked alone, except for the night security guard, Mr. Thompson, who made rounds through the floors. During the first week, Emily cried every night when Sarah left for work. The girl didn't understand why her mother needed to leave when she most needed affection and attention to fall asleep. Mommy, don't you love me anymore? Emily asked on Thursday, clinging to Sarah's leg as she prepared to leave. Sarah knelt down and hugged her daughter tightly. Of course I love you, my angel, more than anything in the world. Mommy just needs to work nights for a while. But I get scared when it gets dark. Mrs. Wilson will take care of you, and Mommy will be back in the morning, just in time for breakfast. And Ethan? When will I see him again? Sarah didn't know what to answer. How to explain to an 8-year-old that friendships between people from different social classes were complicated in the adult world. Meanwhile, Ethan wasn't doing well either. At school, he was distracted during classes, always looking out the window and thinking about Emily. At night, he asked his parents if he could visit his friend, but always received evasive answers. On Friday, during dinner, Ethan finally exploded. I don't understand why I can't see Emily. Ethan, we've already talked about this, said Richard, trying to remain calm. No, you didn't talk. You just told me to forget about her, but I can't, Amanda intervened. Honey, maybe if you made other friends at school. I don't want other friends. I want Emily. She's different. Different how? Asked Richard, genuinely curious. She doesn't keep asking if our house is big, or how many cars we have, or if she can come swim in the pool. She just wanted to dance with me. She laughed at my bad jokes and taught me a song her grandmother used to sing. Richard and Amanda exchanged glances. There was something in their son's voice that touched something deep in both of them. "She has a grandmother?" asked Amanda. "Had. Emily said her grandma died last year, and that she sings the songs Grandma taught her, so she won't forget her." Richard felt a tightness in his chest. He had lost his own mother 2 years ago, and still missed their conversations. "Ethan," said Richard, his voice softer, "the situation is complicated." "Why is it complicated? I just want to be her friend." "Because—" Richard hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because we live very different lives, son. Emily and her mother have worries that we don't have." "What do you mean?" "They worry about money to buy food, to pay rent, to pay for doctors. We don't have those worries." "Then why don't we help them?" His son's simple and direct question silenced Richard. Amanda smiled slightly, proud of the boy's natural empathy. "It's not that simple, Ethan. But Mommy always says that those who can help should help. And we can, right?" Richard didn't know how to respond. That same night, Sarah was cleaning the 15th floor when she heard footsteps in the hallway. It was strange, because Mr. Thompson had already passed by an hour earlier. She stepped out of the room she was cleaning and saw a small figure walking down the hall. It was Ethan, wearing pajamas and slippers. "Ethan!" she whispered, running to him. "What are you doing here?" The boy looked at her with relief. "Mrs. Johnson, I was looking for you." "But how did you get here? It's very late." "I snuck out of the house. I took a taxi and said it was an emergency." Sarah looked around, worried. If someone found Ethan there with her, it would mean certain dismissal. "Ethan, you can't be here. Your father will be very angry." "I don't care. I wanted to see Emily, but she's not here. She's at home, sleeping." "Ethan, let's call your parents. They must be desperate." "No." The boy grabbed Sarah's arm. "I want to talk to you first." Sarah looked at that 9-year-old boy, with his blue eyes full of determination, and saw something that touched her deeply. It wasn't a tantrum or a whim. It was a genuine need for human connection. "What do you want to talk about, Ethan?" "Why was my father mean to you? Why can't Emily be my friend?" Sarah knelt in front of the boy at his eye level. "Ethan, your father wasn't mean. He's just trying to protect you." "Protect me from what?" "From the adult world, which is sometimes complicated. But I don't care if it's complicated. Emily makes me happy." Before Sarah could answer, they heard the elevator open at the end of the hall. Quick footsteps approached. "Ethan!" Richard's voice echoed through the floor. Sarah stood up quickly, pushing Ethan behind her in an instinctive protective gesture. Richard appeared in the hallway, accompanied by Amanda and Mr. Thompson. When he saw the scene, he stopped abruptly. "Ethan, are you okay?" Amanda ran to her son. "I'm fine, Mom. I just wanted to talk to Mrs. Johnson." Richard looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't interpret. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was something more complex. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, his voice controlled. "Can you explain what my son is doing here?" "Mr. Reynolds, I found him in the hallway. I was about to call you." "It's not her fault, Dad." Ethan stepped forward. "I came here alone because I wanted to see Emily and talk to Mrs. Johnson." "Ethan, you left home in the middle of the night, took a taxi by yourself and came here. Do you have any idea of the danger you were in?" "I don't care," Ethan shouted, tears finally welling up. "You won't let me see my friend. You won't let me be happy." The shout echoed through the empty floor. Amanda knelt beside her son and hugged him. "Ethan, we want you to be happy." "No, you don't. You want me to be like you. But I don't want to be like you. I want to have real friends, not just rich people." Richard looked at his son crying in his mother's arms, and then at Sarah, who watched the scene with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Johnson," he said finally, "could you give us a moment?" Sarah nodded and stepped away, but she couldn't help overhearing the conversation. "Ethan," Richard knelt beside his wife. "Son, you're right. We are complicating something that should be simple." Ethan lifted his tear-streaked face. "I just want to be friends with Emily, Dad." "I know, son. And maybe we can find a way for that to happen." Sarah felt her heart race. Was Richard considering changing his mind? "Mrs. Johnson," Richard called her, "could you come here, please?" Sarah approached carefully. "Ethan reminded me of something important today," Richard said, still kneeling beside his son. "He reminded me that true friendship knows no social class or economic differences." Sarah didn't know what to say. "I'd like to propose something," Richard continued. "How about your daughter comes to spend Saturday at our house? Ethan could show her his toys. They could play in the garden." "Mr. Reynolds," Sarah interrupted, her voice trembling. "That's very kind of you, but I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Amanda said softly. "It's one mother helping another. Our son is suffering just like your daughter. Maybe we can find a solution that makes everyone happy." Sarah looked at Ethan, who watched her with hope in his eyes, and then at Richard, trying to understand if this sudden change was genuine. I need to think." "Of course," Richard stood up. "But Sarah, I want you to know that my position on company rules hasn't changed. I still can't allow employees to bring family members to corporate premises." Sarah felt hope fading. "But," Richard continued, "I can reconsider your transfer to the night shift. Maybe we can find a better solution. What are you proposing?" "How about we talk again on Monday? Now I need to take my runaway son home." Ethan smiled for the first time in days and ran to hug Sarah. "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. You're really nice." Sarah returned the hug, feeling the genuine affection from this boy who had turned her life upside down. After the Reynolds family left, Sarah finished her shift thinking about what had happened. Part of her still didn't believe Richard was considering a change of position. Another part feared this was just a moment of weakness he would regret in the morning. On Saturday morning, when Sarah told Emily about the invitation, the girl jumped for joy. "I'm going to see Ethan. I'm going to see Ethan." "Calm down, sweetheart. It's not decided yet." "But he invited me. He wants to be my real friend." Sarah smiled, but still had doubts. She knew well the difference between her world and the Reynolds family's world. She feared Emily would get emotionally hurt, seeing up close a life she could never have. At 10 in the morning, the phone rang. It was Amanda. "Sarah, this is Amanda Reynolds. I was thinking, how about if I come pick up Emily? That way we can get to know each other better, and I can show you our intentions are genuine." Sarah hesitated. "Mrs. Reynolds, I really appreciate it, but—" "Amanda. Call me Amanda. And I understand your concerns. If I were in your place, I'd be scared too. But I'd like you to know our side of the story." 2 hours later, Sarah opened the door of her small apartment to Amanda Reynolds. The elegant woman looked around without judgment, just curiosity. "What a cozy place," she said, and Sarah realized it wasn't just politeness. Emily came running from the living room, wearing her prettiest dress. "Aunt Amanda, where's Ethan?" "He's at home, sweetie, waiting for you, but first I wanted to talk with your mum." Sarah offered coffee, which Amanda accepted. They sat at the kitchen table while Emily ran to get her drawings to show the visitor. "Sarah," Amanda began, "I want you to know I'm no different from you." Sarah raised her eyebrows, skeptical. "I know it sounds strange, but it's true. I was a single mother too. I worked as a secretary to support Ethan when he was a baby." "How so?" "Richard and I separated when Ethan was 2. I left with just one suitcase and a lot of determination. I worked 3 jobs to pay for daycare and support myself." Sarah was surprised. This information didn't match the image she had of the perfect family. "We were apart for 5 years. We only got back together when Richard realized financial success meant nothing without his family." "And why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand that I know what it's like to be afraid of not being able to support a child. I know what it's like to work hard every day and still struggle to pay the bills." Amanda took Sarah's hand on the table. "And I want you to know that we're not offering help out of pity. We're offering it because Ethan has never been as happy as when he was with Emily." "But you're rich now. Your reality is completely different from mine." "Money changes many things, Sarah, but it doesn't change what really matters. Ethan may have all the toys in the world, but he's been feeling lonely. Emily gave him something money can't buy, true friendship." Emily came running back with a stack of drawings. "Aunt Amanda, look! This one is me and Ethan dancing." The drawing showed two children holding hands, surrounded by colorful hearts. It was simple, but it conveyed a pure joy that touched Amanda. "It's beautiful, sweetie. Ethan will love seeing this." Sarah watched the interaction between Amanda and Emily. There was something genuine there, a real connection that went beyond social differences. "Amanda," Sarah finally said, "I accept that Emily spends the afternoon at your house, but with a few conditions." "What are they?" "First, if at any point she feels uncomfortable or out of place, I'll come get her immediately. Second, this can't become a regular thing if Richard changes his mind about my situation at the company." "I agree." "And Sarah, Richard can be stubborn and proud sometimes, but he's not a bad person. He just needs time to understand that doing the right thing doesn't always mean following the rules to the letter." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. The Reynolds mansion in Beverly Hills was everything Sarah imagined and more. The electronic gate opened to reveal a huge property with well-kept gardens and a house that looked like it came straight out of a magazine. Emily looked out the car window with wide eyes, but without the embarrassment Sarah feared. To the little girl, this was just her friend's house. Ethan was waiting at the door, practically jumping with excitement. When he saw Emily getting out of the car, he ran to greet her. "Emily, you came! Do you want to see my room? I have a giant race car track." The two children ran into the house, leaving Sarah and Amanda behind. "I think they'll be just fine," Amanda smiled. "Would you like to come in for coffee while you wait?" Sarah hesitated but ended up accepting. The inside of the house was even more impressive, but Amanda took her to the kitchen, a cozier space. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" Amanda said while making coffee. "Of course." "What is Emily's health problem? Ethan mentioned she needs to go to the doctor often." Sarah sighed. "She was born with a congenital heart condition. It's not serious, but it needs monitoring. The appointments are expensive and sometimes she needs tests. That must be very difficult." "It is. But she's a normal child. She can do everything other kids do. She just needs extra care." Amanda nodded, thoughtful. "Sarah, you might think I'm being nosy, but do you have health insurance?" "I do through work, but it doesn't cover all the specialists she needs." Before Amanda could respond, laughter echoed through the house. They went to investigate and found Ethan and Emily in the game room, building a race car track together. "Look, Aunt Amanda," Emily shouted. "Ethan has a little car that looks like old Jim's Beetle." Ethan laughed. "It's not the same, Emily. Old Jim's is way cooler because it's real." Sarah was surprised. Old Jim was the owner of the repair shop where she sometimes took broken appliances to be fixed. Emily had told Ethan about people in her daily life, and the boy not only listened, but was interested. "Ethan," Sarah said, "do you know Emily likes to draw?" "Really? That's so cool. I like it too. Want to see my drawings, Emily?" The two children ran to Ethan's room, which was the size of Sarah's entire apartment living room. But Emily didn't seem intimidated. To her, it was just the space where her friend kept his toys. "Amanda," Sarah said, watching the children play, "I've never seen Emily so comfortable with someone she just met." Ethan, too. "You know, Sarah, he's always been an introverted child. At school, he has trouble relating to his classmates." "Why?" "I think because of the money. The other children either treat him differently because of his father's position, or their parents encourage friendships out of interest. Ethan notices this even though he's a child." Sarah watched Ethan teaching Emily how to use the professional colored pencils he had. The boy was patient, kind, and genuinely interested in what his friend was creating. "Emily doesn't know you're rich," Sarah said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "She knows Ethan is the son of the boss at the company where I work, but she has no real idea what that means. To her, he's just a friend who has cool toys." Amanda smiled. "Maybe that's why it works so well." The two women spent the afternoon talking while watching the children. Sarah discovered that, despite the obvious differences in financial situation, she and Amanda had a lot in common as mothers. Both worried about their children's happiness. Both wanted them to grow up to be good and empathetic people. When the sun began to set, Sarah said she needed to go. Emily didn't want to leave. "Just 5 more minutes, Mommy, please?" "Emily, it's already late. Thank Ethan and Aunt Amanda for the wonderful afternoon." The girl ran to hug Ethan. "Thank you for showing me your toys. Do you want to come to my house one day?" Ethan looked at his mother hopefully. "Could it be Amanda?" Sarah asked. Of course, Ethan would love to. On the way home, Emily wouldn't stop talking about the afternoon. "Mommy, Ethan has a garden with butterflies, and he taught me how to draw a house with perspective, and Aunt Amanda made that chocolate cake that's just like from the bakery." Sarah smiled, but she also worried. What if that was just a one-time afternoon? What if Richard changed his mind? How would she explain to Emily that she couldn't see her friend anymore? On Monday morning, Sarah arrived at work with a heavy heart. Karen called her as soon as she arrived. "Sarah, Mr. Reynolds wants to speak with you, again." Sarah went up to the 20th floor with sweaty hands. This time, Richard didn't make her wait. "Mrs. Johnson, come in. Please have a seat." Richard seemed different, less rigid, perhaps. "I heard your daughter spent the afternoon at our house on Saturday." "Yes, sir. Amanda was very kind." "Ethan hasn't stopped talking about it. He's happier than I've seen him in a long time." Sarah didn't know how to respond. "Sarah," Richard said, using her first name for the first time, "I want to apologize." Sarah looked up, surprised. "Sir? My reaction last Friday was exaggerated. You made a mistake, yes, by bringing your daughter to the company, but my punishment was disproportionate." Richard stood up and walked to the window. "My son taught me something important this weekend. He showed me that sometimes rules exist to be broken when they serve a greater purpose." "I don't understand, sir." "Sarah, you've worked here for 7 years. Your record is impeccable. You're dedicated, punctual, efficient, and more importantly, you raised a daughter who managed to teach my son about true friendship in 15 minutes of being together." Richard turned to face her. "I'd like to propose something. You'd return to the day shift with a small salary increase. In exchange, I'd like you to consider a special project." "What kind of project?" "We're thinking of creating an employee assistance program for those with children, a kind of support for situations like yours. Would you be interested in helping develop this?" Sarah was speechless. "Mr. Reynolds, I don't have the qualifications for that. You have something better, real experience. You know what the difficulties are, what the needs are. It doesn't need to be anything formal, just your ideas and suggestions." "And Emily? What about her? Can she still be friends with Ethan?" Richard smiled for the first time since Sarah had met him. "Sarah, my son made it very clear that if I separate him from his friend again, he'll run away to your house. And considering he already ran away to the company at night, I think he's capable of following through on that threat." Sarah laughed, still not believing what she was hearing. "So, do you accept my proposal?" "Yes, sir. I accept." "Great. And Sarah, stop calling me sir all the time. Richard is fine." When Sarah left the office, Karen was waiting anxiously. "So?" "I'm back on the day shift," Sarah said, still in shock. "Really? How did you manage that?" "I think my daughter taught his son about friendship." Karen shook her head, laughing. "Children, they achieve things we adults never could." That afternoon, when Sarah got home, she found Emily drawing at the kitchen table. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" "I'm making a drawing for Ethan. It's of us two planting flowers in his garden." Sarah looked at the drawing. It was simple, made with ordinary colored pencils, but full of details and vibrant colors. Emily had drawn herself and Ethan side by side, smiling, with a flower garden in the background. "It's beautiful, dear. I'm sure he'll love it." "Mommy, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "I asked Grandma in heaven to look after Ethan, so he wouldn't be sad." I think she heard. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Her mother always said children had a special wisdom, a connection to things adults couldn't understand. "I think so, sweetheart. I think Grandma heard." In the following weeks, Sarah's routine changed completely. She returned to working during the day, which allowed Emily to attend school normally and still have time with her mother at night. The Employee Assistance Project started simply. Richard created a small room on the ground floor of the company where employees could leave their children in emergencies, supervised by an employee hired specifically for this. Sarah contributed practical ideas: flexible hours for parents who needed to take children to the doctor, an interest-free loan program for medical emergencies, and even a small play area where children could wait while parents finished their shifts. Ethan and Emily became inseparable. At least twice a week, one family would visit the other. Ethan saw Sarah's small apartment and was fascinated by its simplicity and coziness. Emily got used to the Reynolds house, but never lost her naturalness. One day, when the two children were playing in the mansion's garden, Ethan asked a question that surprised everyone. "Emily, would you like to study at my school?" The girl stopped playing. "Your school?" "But I already go to a school." "I know, but at my school they have dance classes. Would you like to learn real dancing?" Sarah, who was nearby, approached. "Ethan, that's very kind of you, but Mrs. Johnson," Ethan interrupted her with the seriousness of a miniature adult, "I talked to my parents. They said if you agreed, they could pay for Emily's school." "Ethan, that's very generous, but we can't accept." "Why not?" Sarah looked at Amanda, who had also approached. "Because it's too much generosity, dear." "But friends help friends, right?" Ethan said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Amanda knelt beside her son. "Ethan, did you talk to your father about this?" "I did. He said he'd think about it, but I think he'll allow it because he's been much happier lately." It was true. Richard had visibly changed in recent weeks. He was more present at home, more patient, and seemed genuinely interested in the stories Ethan told about his adventures with Emily. "Sarah," Amanda said, "how about we talk about this more calmly? It doesn't have to be Ethan's school. We can find a good private school that has what Emily needs, especially considering her heart condition." Sarah felt torn. On one hand, she wanted the best for her daughter. On the other, she was afraid of creating an emotional and financial dependence on the Reynolds family. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, no rush." That night, Sarah talked with Emily about the possibility. "A new school. But I like my school." "I know, sweetheart, but maybe at a new school you could learn different things, like dance, which you love so much." Emily's eyes sparkled. "Like what Ethan learns?" "Maybe. And could I still play with him?" "Of course. Then I want to try." The next day, Sarah sought out Richard to discuss the proposal. He received her in his office, but this time offered coffee and asked her to sit in the armchair next to the desk, not in the formal chair across from it. "Richard," Sarah said, still getting used to calling him by his first name, "I want to thank you for everything you've been doing for us, but I need to understand why." Richard was silent for a moment, as if organizing his thoughts. "Sarah, do you have children?" "I do." "Emily?" "Sorry, I meant other children." "No, just her. Ethan is an only child too. Amanda and I tried for years to have other children, but we couldn't. Ethan is everything to us." Richard stood up and went to a bookshelf where he picked up a photo. "This is a picture of Ethan on his 7th birthday. Look at him." Sarah looked at the photo. Ethan was sitting at an elaborately decorated table with a giant cake in front of him and several gifts around, but the boy's expression was sad. He had everything a child could want, but he was unhappy. "Do you know why?" Sarah shook her head. "Because he had no one to share it with. The other children at the party were children of our friends, partners, employees. None were there because they wanted to be with Ethan. They were there because their parents made them." Richard put the photo away. "When I saw Ethan dancing with Emily at that party, it was the first time in years I saw him genuinely happy. Your daughter gave my son something that I, with all my money, couldn't give him, a real friend. But Richard, investing in Emily's education..." "Sarah, I'll be honest with you. It's not just generosity. It's selfishness too." Sarah raised her eyebrows. "I want my son to stay happy. I want him to have this true friendship that your daughter offers. And for that, I need to make sure you two have the means to remain in our lives." Sarah understood. It wasn't charity. It was an investment in his own son's happiness. "And if I accept, what do you expect in return?" "That Emily continues to be herself, that you both continue to be who you are. We don't want to change you, Sarah. We just want to make your lives easier so the friendship between our families can flourish." Sarah thought for a long moment. "Richard, I accept the school proposal, but on one condition." "What is it?" "I want to contribute financially, even if it's a small amount. I need to feel like I'm participating in my daughter's education, not just receiving it." Richard smiled. "Deal." The school change went more smoothly than Sarah expected. Emily adapted quickly to the new environment, especially because she was taking dance classes, something she'd always wanted but Sarah could never afford. Ethan, who studied at the same school, helped Emily in the first days, introducing her to teachers and classmates. Their friendship grew even stronger. 3 months after the school change, Sarah was called by Emily's dance teacher. "Mrs. Johnson, I need to speak with you about Emily." Sarah felt her heart race, fearing there might be some problem. "Did she do something wrong?" "On the contrary, Emily has exceptional natural talent for dance. In 3 months, she's progressed more than students who've been here for 2 years. Sarah was surprised. "Really?" "I'm recommending she take private lessons with a specialized teacher. She has potential to compete professionally if that's what you want." "Teacher, that must be very expensive." "Actually, I know a teacher who gives lessons in exchange for volunteer work. Emily could help with the younger children's classes in exchange for her own lessons." When Sarah shared the news with Amanda and Richard, they were thrilled. "Sarah, this is wonderful," said Amanda. "Emily will be able to develop her talent." "And Ethan can watch her practices," Richard added. "Maybe he'll get interested too." "Are you sure you don't mind? The classes would be in the afternoon and sometimes Ethan would have to wait." "Sarah," Richard said, "Ethan loves watching Emily dance. Last time he spent 2 hours just watching her practice, completely mesmerized." Indeed, Ethan had become Emily's biggest fan. He watched her practice with genuine admiration and always encouraged her when she got frustrated with a difficult move. 6 months later, Emily participated in her first regional dance competition. The entire Reynolds family came to watch, along with Sarah. "Are you nervous?" Ethan asked Emily backstage. "A little. What if I forget the steps?" "You won't forget. You dance with your heart, not just your head. Remember you told me that?" Emily smiled. "Thank you for being my friend, Ethan." "Always." When Emily stepped onto the stage, wearing a simple but elegant costume that Amanda had helped choose, Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Her daughter was radiant, confident, completely at ease. The performance was magical. Emily danced as if she were floating, each movement flowing naturally into the next. When she finished, the audience gave a standing ovation. "She won," Ethan whispered to Sarah. "I know she won." And Ethan was right. Emily won first place in the children's category. On the way home, holding the trophy as if it were the greatest treasure in the world, Emily asked a question that touched Sarah deeply. "Mommy, do you think Grandma is proud of me?" "I'm sure she is, my love, and I'm very proud too." "What about Ethan? Do you think he was happy for me?" Sarah looked in the rearview mirror and saw Ethan sleeping in the back seat, a smile on his face even in his sleep. "I think so, sweetheart. I think so." 1 year after the first competition, Sarah's life had completely changed. She was promoted to coordinator of the Employee Assistance Program, a position they created specifically for her. The salary was better, the work was rewarding, and she felt she truly made a difference in other people's lives. Emily continued to progress in dance and had started teaching younger children. Ethan, inspired by his friend, began learning piano and discovered he had musical talent. The two families began spending holidays together. Sarah had grown accustomed to the Reynolds home, and Richard and Amanda felt at ease in Sarah's small apartment, though she had moved to a larger place with her salary increase. One Sunday afternoon, while the children played in the garden, Sarah and Amanda prepared lunch together. "Sarah," Amanda said, "can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Richard and I are thinking about having another child." Sarah stopped peeling vegetables. "Really? How wonderful." "Actually, we're thinking about adoption, and we want to adopt an older child, one who might have a harder time finding a family." "That's beautiful, Amanda. Ethan is going to be an amazing big brother." "Do you think so?" Sometimes I worry about how he'll handle sharing the attention. Sarah looked out the window and saw Ethan teaching Emily how to kick a ball. Amanda, look how he takes care of Emily. He has a huge heart. I'm sure he'll love having a little brother or sister. What about you? Have you thought about having more children? Sarah sighed. I would love to, but it's complicated. I'm a single mother, and even with the better salary. Sarah, you know you can count on us for anything, right? I know, and I'm very grateful. But some things I need to figure out on my own. That night, Sarah kept thinking about the conversation with Amanda. She really would like to give Emily a little sibling, but she knew it would be hard to raise 2 children alone. 2 months later, Amanda and Richard announced they had started the adoption process for a 6-year-old girl named Lily. She's a bit shy, Richard explained to Ethan and Emily. She spent a long time in shelters and is afraid to get close to people. Don't worry, Dad, Ethan said, with the maturity of his 10 years. Emily and I will help her feel at home. When Lily joined the Reynolds family, she was indeed very shy. She hid behind Amanda and barely spoke to strangers. But Ethan and Emily were patient. Ethan showed his new sister his toys without pushing. Emily taught Lily how to draw and do little dance steps. Slowly the little girl began to open up. Lily said one day, can you teach me to dance like you? Of course, but first you have to learn to move to the rhythm of the music. Sarah watched the 3 children playing together and felt immense gratitude. The friendship between Ethan and Emily had turned into something much bigger. Now, they were practically an extended family. At school, Ethan protected Lily from other children's comments about her being adopted. Emily included the girl in all activities. The 3 became inseparable. 2 years later, during a school dance recital, something nobody expected happened. Emily was performing when she tripped and fell. For a moment, she lay on the floor, clearly hurt and embarrassed. The audience fell silent. It was then that Ethan stood up from the audience and ran to the stage. He helped Emily up and whispered something in her ear. Emily smiled, wiped away her tears, and the 2 finished the performance together, improvising a dance that delighted everyone. Lily, watching from the audience, started clapping enthusiastically, shouting, "Those are my siblings! Those are my siblings!" Sarah and Amanda looked at each other, both with tears in their eyes. Without realizing it, the 3 children had truly become siblings. "Richard," Sarah said after the performance, "I want to thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me that family isn't just who you're born with, it's who chooses to stay together." Richard smiled. "I think the children taught us that, Sarah. We just learned to listen." 5 years had passed since that first holiday party. Sarah was now the manager of the company's human resources department, responsible for several social programs that benefited employees and their families. At 13, Emily had become a promising professional dancer, competing in national competitions and teaching children at a dance school she helped create herself. At 14, Ethan played piano in school performances and had discovered his passion for classical music. At 11, Lily was an excellent student and had developed a talent for painting. Richard had completely changed his approach to leading the company. He implemented social inclusion policies, created scholarship programs for employees' children, and transformed the corporate culture from competitive to collaborative. Amanda returned to work as a family therapist, specializing in adoptive families and helping others navigate the challenges of non-biological parenting. One Saturday afternoon, the 2 families were gathered in the Reynolds garden to celebrate the 15-year anniversary of Ethan and Emily's friendship. "Do you remember that day at the company?" Ethan asked, now a tall and mature teenager. "How could I forget?" Emily laughed. "You asked me to dance and changed my life." "Our life," Lily corrected. "If you 2 hadn't met, I wouldn't have this family." Richard watched the 3 teenagers talking and remembered how he had almost destroyed that friendship out of pride and prejudice. "Sarah," he said, "have you ever imagined where we would be today if I hadn't changed my mind?" "I'd rather not think about that," she replied. "What matters is where we ended up." "True, and look at what we've built together." Indeed, what had started as an awkward situation at a corporate party had transformed into something much greater. The 2 families not only became close, but created a model for how social differences can be overcome through empathy, understanding, and genuine love. Richard's company became a benchmark for social responsibility, winning national awards for its employee support programs. Sarah became a recognized speaker, sharing her story at conferences about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Emily pursued a career in dance and opened her own school, offering full scholarships to children from low-income families. Ethan became a musician and composer, creating soundtracks for his adoptive sister's dance performances. Lily grew up to become a psychologist specializing in childhood trauma, inspired by her own experience and the love she received from the family that took her in. But most importantly, the three children maintained a bond that went far beyond friendship. They were truly siblings, united not by blood, but by a story of overcoming acceptance and unconditional love. In an interview years later, when Sarah was invited to speak about her book, The Dance of Life, How a Friendship Transformed Two Families, she said, "People always ask me what the secret was. How did a cleaning lady and a CEO manage to overcome such big differences? The truth is, it wasn't us who overcame them. It was our children who taught us that love doesn't know social class, that true friendship doesn't care about bank accounts, and that family is who we choose to share our journey with." End of story. So what did you think of this touching story? How do you think you would have reacted if you were in Sarah or Richard's place? Do you think we could have the same courage as the children to break down social barriers? Tell us in the comments which part of the story moved you the most. And don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that will touch your heart. Your opinion is very important to us.